So I think without further ado, because we've been having some technical issues, what we should do is move on and hear from Hayley and Adam. And it's really kind of you to come in today. If I could ask everybody who's in the chat, if you wanted to just put in any questions that you might have, and I can pick those up in the discussion. Hayley's been really kind because she's in the middle of exams literally at the moment. And so it's great of her to actually spare the time to come along this afternoon and talk to us. And I just wanted to know, Hayley, if you could just say something a bit about what it's like at Exeter. I know you're about to graduate, so what the experience has been like, what you're doing at the moment, what you're going to go on and do, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, so I'm in the middle of exams right now. I've absolutely loved Exeter. Done on the 27th, which is so exciting. And yeah, basically this summer, it's all about getting my kind of CV under wraps and figuring that out, and then going ahead and applying to write my NCAs. I have to write 7 because I did the 2-year grad LLB program. So hopefully, if everything is going as planned, I'll write my my first set of exams in, I believe, the end of October. Just with when I'll get results and everything, I don't think I'll make the August one. And then write NCAs, hopefully be done those by, I'm going to push for February, which is the second writing date. And then from there, apply for articling positions and then get called to the bar. So it'll be a lot in a short period of time, but it's exciting then just to kind of move on with the process and kind of get everything done.
Sorry, I had my mic off. So does anyone have any questions to start with about the experience? Right, so we have one question so far. So is the teaching approach for the 3-year LLB similar to the Leminar method, or is it entirely separate? I don't know if you can speak to that at all. And then another question we have is on the 2-year program, how much more of a workload is there and how many hours per week? So maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
So I can answer very much so for the workload on the 2-year program. It all depends on how productive you are. I mean, our first year, it was a different setup than it was this year. So the first year we had lectures, syndicates, and seminars. So there was kind of 3 opportunities for you to get kind of caught up and focused on what you were doing that week. The second year, so the year that I was in, they changed everything over to the Leminars. So you only had once a week, you had class for 3 hours once a week, but then you had reading and whatnot on top of that. In terms of the workload, it depends kind of what's happening that week. I mean, you try for the most part to keep up with every single course, but you find after the first month that might not be possible to do. So you tend to prioritize based on what's due that week and kind of whatnot on that course. So I mean, for 3 hours class, I don't know, every day and every night I was doing something and doing the readings, and some readings are mandatory, some readings they recommend you do, they're kind of compulsory. So in terms of like the hours, I mean, it fluctuates. Some weeks were more hectic than others depending on assignments and having kind of formatives to hand in. But yeah, so it fluctuates. I don't know if anyone else can speak on that.
Adam, would you say your experience was similar in terms of workload and time management?
For my year, I didn't have the Leminar format, so I can't really say for sure what workload would be like. I will say that when the format was the same as the regular 3-year program, that the workload was identical to what other students were doing in the 3-year program. There's no difference in workload. The order of courses you take is different, but you take the same courses. That doesn't necessarily change. So for my year, I'd say the workload was comparable, and there's not a huge difference between the two programs.
Do you want to say something about the Leminars, Hayley?
Yeah, so they were just, I believe they were just new this year in terms of like the difference between first and second year for me. So normally in the first year, we had lectures where they would be 50 minutes, and then you have syndicates, which was kind of group work and kind of going through the questions where they were guided by the tutor. And then seminars is where you would kind of come together and just discuss basically the work that you've done and potentially the cases and how they applied. So it was kind of building on each type of learning style as well that differed. However, for the Leminars, it ended up just being 3 hours a week per course. And you would go in and you would kind of do it all in once, where I preferably enjoyed that, because then you would kind of deal with everything in the 3 hours, focus on that. You get little breaks in between. There would be a discussion. There'd be a lecture at the beginning as well. So it was nice. I enjoyed it. But, you know, in saying that, you have to make sure that all your reading's done ahead of time, because if you go in, you're sitting there without doing your reading, you're sitting there for 3 hours, not really understanding what's going on. So it's more preparation. But I thoroughly enjoyed it this year. I'm not too sure, Sue, is it going to be the same next year?
Yeah, no, it's going to be the same next year.
It's going to be the same. Yeah. So in terms of that, my advice with that would be to make sure that you're on top of the readings then, and make sure that, you know, you're going into the class knowing, even if it's just the foundation of what's going on, and then at least you'll be able to understand the concepts. But they do a lecture at the beginning, and then there is a discussion. So it kind of takes to different styles of learning as well, which I enjoyed. So do you mind if I speak upon the accommodation question?
Yeah, go on, please.
So with accommodations, I know, Adam, did you live in student accommodations first year, or did you live off campus?
I chose to live off campus, not on student accommodations. And it's not necessarily difficult to find accommodation. It is difficult to find accommodation if you want to live on your own, and if you want to live on your own affordably. It can be a little difficult. That being said, I don't know how it has been last year for you, Hayley, but I know that they were building a new student building pretty much every 10 feet in Exeter. So I imagine that it's become quite more competitive. But I opted to live off campus, and I heard good things about living on campus, and I personally enjoyed living off. So I think that you can't go wrong either way. Yeah,
my preference. So when I first considered going to Exeter, I took it two ways. Like the first reason being is that, like, going to law school at 23, I'd already done the undergraduate back in Canada. I've already lived in residence. I lived with 6 people. I went to the University of Guelph for my undergraduate. And I lived with 6 people in one house. And I was kind of at that stage where I was like, I need my own space, I need my own kitchen, and I need my own bathroom. And that's what I was going in with. Huge advantage to that is you have your own space. And, like, as I say in quotes, you're living in kind of your own dirt. So in suggesting that, you don't have to think about, you know, cleaning up potentially after people, sharing a kitchen, and kind of those added stresses that go on to living by yourself. Plus, in law school too, with the readings and whatnot, your brain's kind of in a different space. And so that's what I didn't want. I did struggle, I have to say, and I will be transparent about that. I did struggle because coming from Toronto and to a different country, I didn't know anybody. So you kind of move into your place, and at the end of the night, you're sitting there not really interacting or having that social element of it. So if I were to go back and do it, I would probably do student accommodations just to be able to build those relationships and to have, you know, people to kind of come home to and to hear in your house. But on top of that, I mean, once the first day of school hit and it was, you know, all of the get to know the people in your program, everything changed and we all started kind of hanging out together. Then again, it was nice to kind of go back to my own place. Speaking upon Anna's point, like, it's not difficult to find accommodations. I just went onto the university website and they have a whole list of kind of options there. And then I emailed back and forth between people. And if you are interested in off-campus accommodations, the person who ran my building actually did a Skype video call with me. So she walked me around the building and showed me kind of everything it had to offer. And then I made my decision from there. It was also too kind of a disadvantage because I wasn't able to kind of go to the university. I kind of went not knowing what I was getting myself into, what the campus looked like. It was all kind of online, but it was also exciting at the same time. And everyone was very accommodating over emails and very receptive to that. So,
just to say, when we email you all afterwards, there is a virtual campus accommodation tour so that you can actually go and have a look at the accommodation virtually. So that's something that we'll include in the links. So there's all different types of accommodation at Exeter, and you can have a look at the different links on our website. Do we want to pick any of the other questions, or should I say something a bit more about the Law Society and pro bono, Leah, and then we can move on to Adam?
I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people have a similar question to this one, which is what kind of difficulties should one expect during their first semester in terms, for example, like the different grading system in Canada versus the UK. So if you guys could speak on that, I'm sure that'll help a lot of these students.
The grading system for sure is something you have to wrap your brain around. It is very different to what we have here. I remember when I got back my first assignment, I earned a 65, which I thought was horrible, but I realized it's like a B plus or an A minus in the UK. So I look into that and understand that a little bit. There's no direct conversion for grades, but if you're in the 60s, you're good. If you're in the 50s, not so great. And if you're below 50 and you want to return to Canada, you're going to have extra NCA exams, unfortunately. Other than the grading, living in Exeter is great. It's a smaller community and a smaller school, which is something that I personally really liked about it. If you do intend to go back and article, or if you want to stay in the UK and do a trainee contract, for both scenarios, you're going to need letters of reference from your professors. You're going to need at a minimum 2 letters of reference. And the smaller community, and especially the smaller Laminar format for the 2-year LLB, really means that you get to know your professors one-on-one, which is a huge advantage to other schools like Leicester or Birmingham or Kent, which are programs of hundreds and hundreds of students. And I saw a question from Madison about other reasons why you'd choose Exeter. Other than the smaller class size, which I preferred, is the really excellent pro bono opportunities. You kind of have to compare yourself to domestic JD students if you're Canadian. Typically, a JD student will do at least one extracurricular legal-related activity per academic year. And having access to pro bono programs is a huge asset for you guys. The school makes it incredibly easy to sign up and apply for these things. And as long as your application's decent, you stand a really good chance of getting into one of them. That's about it for me.
And there's a question there about Adam. Adam, I don't know if you want to say something about your experience. There's a question about whether you did the 2-year LLB as well.
I did do
about what you've been doing this year.
Sure, I did do the 2-year LLB. Of the 2 programs, it's the one that I would recommend if your plan is to come back and practice law in Canada. It just makes things easier. The difference is the NCA typically assigns a student of a 3-year degree 5 NCA courses, the 5 mandatory courses. If you opt to do the 2-year program, you're assigned an additional 2 courses. These are optional courses, and you can take any course that you like. And you can do those 2 courses in a month effectively. So you're adding an additional year of school for 2 very short courses. Other than that, I graduated in 2019. Of the pro bono programs I volunteered at the PSU, Personal Support Unit through the Exeter Crown Court, and I worked in the Environmental Law Clinic. Right now, I have written 1 NCA exam, but I've actually opted to do the LLM pathway to accreditation through the University of Toronto. So I can answer questions about that. And while I'm doing that, I work in a corporate litigation firm during the week. So I can bore you with those details if you're really interested. And that's about it for me.
So there's a question.
Sorry.
Would you be disadvantaged if you've done science original degree? And how much prior legal knowledge do you need for the 2-year degree? I don't know if you, Hayley, I don't know if being fairly recent arrival, did you need any prior legal knowledge?
No. So I would say you don't need any prior legal knowledge. You learn the foundations and then build upon that throughout the year. And that's the whole goal of every course. I mean, I did my undergrad in criminology, so it was very much essay-based. I did a Bachelor of Arts, so I was used to writing long essays. I was used to writing papers, and that's kind of what I did my whole university career, and my master's as well was in criminology. So I was used to writing larger papers. I was used to researching, and I knew the foundation of how to research. However, especially this year, we learned different styles of essay writing. So like, for instance, in my equity and trust class, I had never written a professional opinion before. It's just been solely essays and research questions and whatnot. So you do learn how to write different forms of papers. I mean, if you're coming from, let's say, a science background or whatnot, you might just have to give yourself extra time to write papers. Maybe, the flow might not come as easily, but I mean, after your first essay, you'll get kind of the hang of it. So definitely, no, I don't think that you would need any prior legal knowledge. You kind of learn that from the beginning with the foundational courses that you're required to take. But yeah, I can't really speak on how your success as somebody who has a science background. I'm sure you're just going to do fine. But coming from somebody who wrote essays for the last 6 years of university, it definitely helped, but doesn't mean that I wouldn't say you're at a disadvantage at all.
So if I could jump in, actually, my first degree was a science degree, and I also had no prior legal knowledge, and I did the 2-year program. And actually, you'd be surprised at how many JD students start off doing science degrees. For whatever reason, a science degree really lends itself well to legal studies and legal writing in particular. So I don't think at all you'd be disadvantaged. If anything, it would be an advantage to your legal writing. So I see a question from Yvonne about the LLM programs. Maybe I'll address that, Sue.
Thank you.
So for the NCA accreditation process, you have 2 pathways effectively. You can either write exams directly through the NCA themselves, or you can do what I'm doing, which is through an LLM program. When I say LLM program, it's not a standard master's program through the University of Toronto. They have specific programs for people seeking accreditation, which you just technically earn an LLM degree. The only difference is there's no thesis is involved. You write, you do courses. So you do the 5 mandatory courses plus additional courses that you might need directly through the university, which the NCA accepts. You'll have to apply to those in your final year of studying, whenever you choose to do it. The deadlines are usually in and around Christmas or just after, and you'll need a writing sample plus letters of reference from professors, preferably. Adam, what was your experience applying for LLM in Toronto? What can one do to have a better chance of getting in? So the LLM program at the University of Toronto caters not just to recent graduates, but to professionals. It's considered a professional LLM. So if you really want to set yourself apart for that one, you need technically work experience. But prior to my degree, I worked for a couple of years, so I think that set me apart. But I also think doing things like the pro bono clinics and working in law really does help. When you're applying to these LLM programs, they put less of an emphasis on grades for the specific reason that the grades don't really convert very well when you're applying to Canadian schools. So I would say focus definitely on extracurriculars. And the LLM is 1 year.
Yeah, especially just to add to that point, I know 2 people from my year decided to do the LLM. They were both from Montreal, not that makes a difference, but they basically said, it's a kind of another degree to kind of have under your belt, which is great. They didn't really want to go the NCA kind of self-study route. But in getting in, they very much stressed also too about being on the Canadian Law Society and other kind of programs that Exeter has to offer, and that kind of, they said, helped build their kind of resume and their application as well. So you did see a lot of, it's in second year that I was in, a lot of people wanting to become more involved just to kind of boost their CV slightly, which they were discussing helped a lot as well.
So the writing sample for the LM application, either they want an essay you've written for some schools, other schools just want you to write about why you think you'd be a good fit for the program. One thing that I should mention is there are 3 programs like this that I know of, maybe 4. There's one at York, there's one at UBC, and there's one at U of T. And there may be a 4th at McGill. I don't know if it still exists. I might be wrong, but Haley might know about that if her friends went to Montreal.
I'm not too sure. They both are going to U of T.
Okay, well, there you go.
It might, but I know they applied to all of them, and then they kind of just selected from there. And then they said when they, oh gosh, it was in February, I think they heard, it was all just about maintaining kind of the average that they had. And yeah, they think they start in September with that.
So we see a question from Morella about if you're from Quebec, do you have to take any extra exams in order to do their exam? I haven't heard that about the NCA. They just want to accredit the degree. That being said, when you do the bar, you have to do a separate bar for the province of Quebec because they have a civil system. So that's where the differences start. But you'll have an NCA night where a speaker comes in once a year, and that'll be a good question for them. They would know more.
So there's also a question here about the tuition fees and about scholarship. So I can send through the details of the tuition fees. It's £18,500 a year, which I'm not quite sure of the conversion rate right now, just because I'm not sure exactly what the fees are. That would possibly be about 25,000 Canadian dollars a year. We do have a scholarship, and the scholarship is £2,500 a year and the scholarship is available for the graduate LLB, not for the straight LLB. So we'll put the details of that in an email, because just so that we can actually sort of explain it more straightforwardly, rather than just be spieling off loads of figures over this call. Are there any other questions coming through? I think we've got a few more minutes left. I just wanted to say something a bit about the Canadian Law Society. So we do have an active Canadian Law Society, which we do various events with. I don't know, Haley, if you've been attending any of those this year?
Yeah, I was actually a general secretary this year. So I was a part of it first year. Basically, the first week, I was like, okay, well, it's kind of Canadian Law Society. It's kind of a way to meet other Canadians. And it's not just Canadians. There was basically like 70% of my program decided it would be fun to join. So it's everybody. but yeah, it was a great way to meet people from back home, and funny how you find that you maybe only live 20 minutes from them back home, which is awesome. Absolutely loved it. There were so many different events, including NCA nights, and talking to other alumni who have done the NCA. So it was a little bit it was nice to hear about their experiences. We did dodgeball, which was fun. And then this year I decided to be on actually end of last year, I decided to run for the committee, just so I could be kind of a part of the events and kind of taking the reign on that, which was fun. We have nice sweaters I was in charge of getting to kind of bring back home and wear at Christmas time, which was awesome. But yeah, our committee, it is one of the smaller ones, but it's great. You get to meet people from kind of everywhere in the world, not just Canadian. So it was fun.
One of the things I really love about the Canadian Law Society is the Thanksgiving event that happens in October, which is just really nice and has lots of, I think it's because it's so inclusive and lots of people attend who aren't Canadian and therefore learn a lot about Canada, which is nice too, because as well as when you come over and study with us, it's not just about the studies, it's also about being an ambassador for Canada. And I think that's a nice sort of feeling, and definitely the Thanksgiving event is part of that.
And that's definitely our biggest event as well. And it's always a lot of fun. So if you have the opportunity to be on the committee and run for it, I highly encourage that. And
we've got a couple of questions about the 3-year LLB. There isn't a scholarship for the 3-year program, only for the 2-year graduate program, because it's a postgraduate program. For the 3-year program, advice and tips. Is that advice and tips about the studying or about getting onto the program? I wonder, Diana. Just generally, I would say that the 3-year LLB gives you a more immersive experience, and that's because you've got the foundation year. So you would be studying more about the English legal system as part of that year. We have a focus on advocacy, negotiation, and practice, and it gives you much more of a chance to work on pro bono opportunities because you've got a longer period of studying law, and also 2 summer vacations where you can do vacation placements. So it's a longer period of thinking about the law. It gives you more chance to take electives of different kinds over a 2-year period. So I think that's the benefit of the 3-year program, is you will come out of it with more depth in terms of being able to focus on different pro bono and active parts of the course, and also more chance to do different forms of electives. So it's just that you've got more depth in terms of your study of law, I suppose. The admissions requirements for the 2-year LLB. If you're coming in as a graduate, we're looking for a 3 GPA, 3 out of 4 on average. Yeah, so I think I've just answered Ariana's question as well. It's approximately 3, but we also do look obviously at your whole degree course. So even though we'd say a 3, we some people come in with a vast array of experience. I think people come in with volunteering, having done lots of other things, and we would take all of that into account, because we don't have what we are looking for is the whole student. So we're looking for how you can contribute to our program and how you can take part in it, rather than just looking at your grades. And so we would look at everything that you've been doing, and for that reason you're required to write a personal statement. So in that statement you would be writing about some of the other activities that you've taken part in your preparation before you come and apply to Exeter. And how the semester and year run. So we run from mid-September. So next year we're starting on the 21st of September. We run up to just before Christmas. And then we have about a month off at Christmas. And then the term runs from January through to the end of March. We then have about a month off in April, and then the final term is the exam term. So that would normally run from the end of April through to May, and you would finish when your last exam finishes. So I think Hayley is suggesting that her assessments will finish in the next couple of weeks. So normally by the end of May, you would have finished your assessments. And then you would have the summer in which to plan for vacation placements or internships before you start again the following September. There's not only exams, so I think we've talked already a little bit about the types of assignments. So you would have some exams, you would have some assessments during the course of the year, and you would have some timed assessments, and then different forms of assessments like writing judicial opinions, for example. I don't know if you want to talk about what assessments you're doing at the moment, Hayley, the nature of them, the type of things.
Yeah, so this year you do take 3 core courses, but you also have the opportunity, I believe, so it's 45 additional credits.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just to kind of pick what you want to study. So that's either like doing a 30 credit, an additional 15. So they're all different. And they'll tell you about that leading up to it as well. But I chose to do a dissertation this year, and that ran the whole year. So I worked with a professor and kind of got to choose the topic, did research throughout the whole year. So I just submitted that now. So I've been working on that since September, kind of end of September, October, I chose my topic, and then been doing that since. So I actually submitted that last night. So that was kind of one thing, and it was worth 100%. And then I have 2 48-hour exams. So I did one 2 weeks ago, and I have my last one on the 25th. So that's where they are online, and you get a question, and you have basically 48 hours to give a response to it, and it's about 2,500 words, which may seem like a lot, but when you're actually writing it, you wish there was more for the word count. And then I am doing actually Sue's ADR right now, and that we have had a bit of time to do, which is nice. You're able to kind of get kind of plan it out in a significant amount of time, and then provide a response. So all the assignments vary. In some courses, you might have something worth 100%. In others, it might be spread out. Second year, my assignments were all kind of weighted differently, which was a different change up. So it just depends on the course and the assessment style.
Thank you. So maybe we should just take one more question. There's a question about whether we give assistance for summer internships in Canada or just strictly in Exeter. I think I would say that with law is a very competitive area that if you want to go into practice. And so we don't tend to provide actual internships. A lot of law firms will run competitive processes for students who want to have internships. And so what we would be doing is providing you with the skills that you would need to apply for those. So we do have strong relationships with the bar and with firms in London. And a lot of those firms tend to be large international firms. And we have a law fair every November, which it's possible to go to. And a lot of the big law firms from London that across the world will come to Exeter and look to recruit students onto their vacation placements. So it's possible to apply for those, and we will definitely give you help with applying for internships. And then once you've got those skills, if you want to go for an internship in Canada, we would support you and help you do that. But we don't actually provide the actual internships ourselves. So what we'd be looking is to give you the experience to enable you to do that. And a lot of our students, I mean, I don't know, Adam and Hayley, if you want to talk about experiences you've had over the summer or internships or placements. I know that we've had students that go back and do judicial shadowing in Canada or work for firms in Canada. Really, it just depends upon what experience you've got and your ability to apply for different opportunities, and we would support you in doing that.
Like I was saying earlier, during the summers is when I would do the pro bono programs. That's when I chose to do those. As far as, so in the UK, summer experiences are called summer schemes with large law firms, and they are incredibly competitive, regardless of whether or not you're an international or domestic student. Something to think about is that hiring for those begin effectively in September and run through till about early January, if my memory is correct. And if you want to be working that summer, you pretty much, as soon as you start in Exeter, you need to start filling out applications. In Canada, they are called summer students at law. And both of these roles are precursors to either articling or training contracts. So if you have a firm in mind that you want to work for, the main way that they hire articles or trainees is through these summer schemes and through these student laws. So you really need to be thinking about that fairly quickly when you start, which I know is difficult. But both are incredibly competitive. Even if you decide to stay in Canada, the student laws are very difficult to get a hold of, and so are summer schemes. So what I did my first year and what I recommend is to do as many of these pro bono extracurricular things as you can to really beef up your resume so that by the second summer, you're very competitive. That would be what I'd add.
Very much. Okay, I think if you have any other questions, then what we will do is Leah's actually already put up her email address that she can pass those questions on to us, and we can pick them up and take them on offline. And in the meantime, we'll also send you the links, because we had technical issues. We'll send you the links to the videos that we were trying to show you and the presentation, so that you'll be able to have a look at those at your leisure. And then if you do have questions, you can come back and ask us about them. I wanted to particularly thank Adam and Hayley for your time today. I know that you're studying at the moment, so it's both of you, it's really, really appreciated. And I know you can't see me, but it's really lovely for me to see you. So that's an added bonus for me today. But and I also wanted to thank everybody for your patience with the technology and for bearing with us whilst we were trying to get everything set up. And it is really great to read your questions and just to see some of the interests that you've got in the course. And I really hope that you're able to carry on engaging with us. And if there's anything more that you want to know, we're only too happy to help you and answer your questions. And the other last thing to say is just that, yeah, if you do have anything more, do speak to Leah or do come directly to us. And thank you ever so much for your time this evening. Thank you, everybody.
Yes, to echo that, thank you so much. And I'm really grateful to Adam and Hayley for joining us, but also to Sue and Emma for taking the time to be here as well. Bearing in mind that most of us are in the UK, so it's a bit late here. So it is a time sacrifice for them. So they really, really do want you to know about Exeter and are taking the time to do that. So I really do encourage you to email me if you have any further questions. Take advantage of this opportunity, because this is a really great chance to learn not just what it's like to study at Exeter, but what happens, during Exeter and life after Exeter, essentially. So on that note, I'll end the session and I'll let you guys carry on with the rest of your days. And thanks so much. And we'll be emailing you soon with more information.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.